So for accumulation phases, when the goal is hypertrophy, what's my favorite split for the accumulation? Using a 5-day split where I'm not working on Sunday when it's not an option. So my favorite by far is, and you're gonna have to bear with me on this one because it's a little complicated, but what happens is you split your training into 4 different days. A chest and back day, a lower body day that's more quad dominant, a arms and shoulder day, and a posterior chain day. And then over the course of 3 weeks, what's going to happen is the lower body sessions, so lower body quad dominant and posterior chain, you're going to train it 3 times, so once a week. And now the smaller muscles of the upper body, so your chest and back and your arms and shoulder, since they're going to recover a little bit faster, you're going to be able to train them 4 times during that 3-week period. So here is how the split looks. So week 1, on Monday, you have chest and back. On Tuesday, you have your lower body session that's more quad dominant. On Wednesday, you have arms and shoulders. On Thursday, posterior chain. On Friday, you come back to chest and back again. Saturday and Sunday's off. Week 2, on Monday, you have your quad session. On Tuesday, you have your arms. On Wednesday, you take that day off, or you can do remedial work like rotator cuff, scap work, grip, forearms, calves, stuff like that. On Thursday, now you're back to your chest and back. And then on Friday, you have posterior chain. Saturday and Sunday off again. Now, week 3, you have arms on Monday. You have your lower body quad session on Tuesday. You have chest and back on Wednesday. You have your posterior chain session on Thursday. And then you finish with arms on Friday with Saturday and Sunday off. So as you can see, during that 3-week period, the arms and shoulders was at 4 times. The chest and back was at 4 times. The lower body 3 times. The posterior chain 3 times. So it's 5 days a week. But the alternations of the days with the big lower body sessions and the smaller lower body sessions allow you to do all that work while still feel like you're really being able to recover. So I really like it. You guys try it out. It's very good accumulation phases. What's my favorite method to improve the front squat? I mean, that's a very vague question. It's it's a little bit hard to answer because I don't really know what are the weaknesses in the lift for this specific lifter. So, I mean, obviously practicing the lift, I think the front squat, it's one of these where you have a lot of people that the main reason why they struggle is they just have poor technique. But besides this, one method that I like are the 3-pause concentric method. So this is a isometric method where you're going down into your front squat normally as you would in your training, but then on your way up, in the bottom quarter, you pause for 2 to 3 seconds, midpoint, another 2 to 3 second pause, and then top quarter, another 2 to 3 second pause. So what happens with these pauses is not only does it increase intramuscular tension during your concentric, but which is good on a strength development, but what's interesting is these pauses through that concentric kills momentum, and it forces you to position yourself properly. Like, it doesn't allow for like any flaws in technique when you're pausing with the barbell in the front rack position at these points. So to me, it's a very effective method to cue and reinforce technique, which I find is one of the main factors for front squat weakness. Now, because you have all these pauses and the sets are fairly long, I do not recommend going above 4 reps with that method. Okay, so 4 reps would be the absolute maximum amount of reps you would do. Otherwise, the time under tension becomes way too long, and the risk reward on a technical perspective and injury perspective gets like negated. How do you bring up small deltoids? Well, my favorite approach is obviously using the undulating periodization principles. Is you would do an accumulation phase where you would use a split routine where you have a day dedicated to delts. And then you do a lot of volume with isolated exercises. To facilitate that, you can use techniques like the trisets or giant sets, but all delt, all isolated. You can use the pulley as well. What I like about the pulley is the constant tension it creates. But that's it. Like, just drive a lot of reps, a lot of sets through your accumulation phase. Now, because the shoulders like tend to, you can have a mixed fiber type. For most people, a little more towards a slow twitch, but then you cannot negate the efficacy of training at high loads as well. So now what you do in your intensification phases, now you switch to more compound shoulder movements like the overhead press, and then you load it at high loads. For hypertrophy purposes, I would say like anywhere from 80 to 90%, so 3 to 7 reps would be a good load for your intensification phases when the goal is hypertrophy. So you see, you mix isolated high volume with compound heavy movement from phase to phase over a 12-week block, and you should be able to bring along your delts. Now, one very important thing is, as you're trying to improve your delt, you need to minimize, or not minimize, but you need to reduce the volume you're doing on your chest and back. Because if you trash your leg, your delts, but you also blast your chest and back, the problem is the body is going to try to recover what's the prime movers, which is your chest and back first, at the expense of your delt, in a way, if you want to make it in like simple terms. So to really allow the delts to do its work and fully recover, so you can really train them, just make sure that the volume of chest and back is reduced so that it doesn't affect your growth potential in your delt. So go-to method to bring up weak body parts for physique athletes. Well, one of my favorite approach for this specific goal is to do specialization phases. So let's say you want to bring up your back. What I like to do is you do a phase where you train back on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so 3 days in a row. And then Thursday, Friday, like Thursday might be lower body and Friday is your other upper body muscles, so your chest and arms. Okay. Now what happens is your 3 days of back, it's basically the concept like overreaching and then overcompensation. But what you need to make sure is that these 3 days of back, you're hitting different motor unit pulls, but different muscle fiber thresholds. So on Monday, you might do like a heavy back workout. So chins, like heavy rows. Then on Tuesday, so like by heavy, I mean, 3 to 7 reps. And then on Tuesday, then you do your mid-range type of reps, like the hypertrophy bracket, the classic 8 to 12 type deal. And then on Wednesday, then you go like way more into metabolic hand. So you're going to use methods like supersets and trisets and giant sets and stuff like that to really create a metabolic response on your back, on your upper back muscle. So you see, it's not just to do the same type of back approach training for 3 days straight, but you vary the stimulus by going from heavy to mid to more endurance or metabolic. Rings for chin-up. So I'm assuming the question is, do I like rings for chin-ups? Yes, I think it's great. I think you're adding an instability element, which makes the movement harder, which is more challenging, which is awesome. Also allows for more freedom of your hand position as you're doing it. So for people who lack supination or people who have like elbow issues and all that kind of stuff, it's a good thing in the sense that you can individualize the grip to whatever feels best as you're doing it. So yeah, I think it's awesome. Like us at Kilo, we don't have chains, but we have like Atlantis made us some adjustable grip handles, that rotates and moves, which adds to the challenge of the chin. But like the ring, it's an even greater extent because there's even more stability, especially if the attachment of the ring is long. So yeah, it's great. So in what phase would I use myotatic, or also known myometric techniques? So for those who don't know, the myotatic technique is a technique where, let's say on the press, you would lower the weight, come back up a quarter of the way, do a momentary pause, like half a second, and then you just drop everything, and then you use elastic energy to help you through your concentric. So you go down under control, come back up a quarter, then drop the brakes, bam, use the elastic energy, and then you explode back up in the bottom. So technically speaking, this is a method for the athletic population that would be best used in the intensification phase, especially nearing the competitive period. But for Gen Pop, for the average person just training for overall development, it would not be a bad thing to use that method in the accumulation phase as well. Okay, so they can be used in both, but just keep in mind that the true nature of this is one of speed strength. So it's just more useful in the intensification phase with the athletic population. Tips about training soccer players. Again, this is such a broad question. Now keep in mind, I'm just reminding you guys that as a strength coach, I'm more one to focus on the athlete's weaknesses more so than the sport that they do, although the sport does make a difference. But just keep that in mind. So if I had a soccer player who comes in with like the weakest lower back in the world, well, for that specific soccer player, improving his lower back would become my main factor. Now, generally speaking, let's say you have no information and you need to write a program for a soccer player. The one thing that I will say that I would prioritize, especially in the earlier phases of training, would be like strengthening the knee joint. So like exercise like split squats, leg curls, all the step up variations would be very effective. Even working the gastroc, so the calf muscles. Ankle range of motion for soccer players is very important. So when you're training your calves, I would make sure I have like long pauses in the stretch position. Now, why I'm saying the calves and the leg curl and the split squats and all that stuff is the knee joint for soccer player, it's quite important. You want it as healthy and as solid as possible. So the stronger the gastroc is, the stronger the knee flexor is, the stronger the VMO is, the more stability you're creating at the knee joint. So on the injury prevention perspective, it's very important. So you start the off season with focusing on that. Now, once you've built that base here, then you can transfer to more compound movements. So the emphasis could switch to your squat or, front squat and stuff like that as you're getting closer to the season. But all I'm saying is for soccer, make sure you don't neglect all the movements around that knee joint.